And good evening, and welcome to the PSAHPERD Convention Preview Series. This is episode 3 of 4, and we have 3 great guests with us tonight. We have Craig Kemmerlin, sorry. He's going to be presenting at our convention this year, and he'll tell you a little bit about that. And then we have, we affectionately in PSAHPERD call them the Jens, but Jen Butz and Jen Rudella are with us tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about technology and assessment. So we'll start with Dr. Rudella and let her introduce herself and work to the other Jen, and then Craig, and we'll get right into it.
Well, hello. Thank you for that introduction. I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself. Obviously, I teach at Lock Haven University. I teach health education pedagogy courses in the health and physical education program. I'm an alumni from the program, and this is my second year teaching at Lock Haven. And prior to that, I taught about 5 years in public school, and it was K through 12 health and physical education, basically. So I really love teaching, and I really love teaching in higher ed. And is there anything else that you wanted us to include for an introduction?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Jen.
Great. Good evening. My name is Jen Butz. I'm an elementary physical education teacher at Northern Lehigh School District. That's in Slatington, Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley. I've been an educator in public ed for 12 years. I'm also the Vice President-elect of Physical Education for PSAHPERD, and I'm also a doctoral candidate at Indiana University of PA in curriculum and instruction.
All right, Craig.
All right, I'm Craig Kemmerlin. I'm a high school physical education teacher at Cedar Crest High School here in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and this is my 7th year of teaching. This is about my 18th year involved with high school students. I previously was an athletic trainer for several years, so I shifted to the teaching world about 7 years ago.
Nice. Well, welcome all 3 of you, and thanks so much for being with us. We're going to talk a little bit about your careers and your thoughts on education, and then we'll get into kind of what we'll see. We'll do the convention preview part, and then as we've ended every episode this year, we're gonna ask you for your Twitter advice for our viewers. So we'll start with Dr. Rudella tonight. I'm a big fan, as you know, of the new type of education. I'm not a big compliance-based education person. I think that we need to prepare kids for the world that they're entering, that entrepreneurial spirit, and things of that nature. Can you talk a little bit about preparing the teachers that are coming to you, the teacher prep kids, and what Lock Haven's doing to prepare them for the different world that we're having to prepare our kids for?
Do you want me to elaborate on the technology and for Lock Haven University, or just anything in general?
Yeah. What's Lock Haven doing? Like, is there changes to curriculum? Are you still teaching the sport model stuff, or are you doing more of a student-led, student voice, student choice, that kind of thing?
Well, basically, in the teacher education program, overall as a university, they're looking into changing the reflective teaching decision-making model, and that's something that we're still deciding if we want to keep the same one, or if we want to change it, and how we want to change that. So that's kind of in transition right now. As far as teaching and preparing teachers, one of, at least me as an educator, and I always like to offer those services with technology of, what can we do for students that can meet the needs of the learners? And one of the biggest things is technology. And interestingly, we just had a meeting last week, and technology competence is now going to be university-wide, and they're working on it with assessment and putting into track data and so forth. So that's something that's up and coming at Lock Haven University, which I thought was really cool, because now we're focusing on technology. Well, I should say it's a criteria for students. And then just as a whole, as education, I think that's pretty much it for the up and coming.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, jump in.
You mean me?
Oh, I think I echoed myself. Somebody's got their speakers up. That's why. Okay. I thought it was Craig jumping in. My bad. No, I love that you're jumping in with I love that you're doing that technology and really pushing that technology competence, because I mean it's not curriculum itself, but it certainly can enhance great teaching, and it's an important piece that I think sometimes we get caught up in, especially with young people who are looking at their phones all the time, or they get accused of looking at their phones. So instead of telling them to put it away and just banning the phones, what if we taught them etiquette and using the phones and things like that? So I love that you're looking at that. Speaking of technology, Jen, you did a STEM camp this summer, and can you talk a little bit about that, how that fits into health and PE? I think it was a funny story behind it. Didn't you just bring it up and all of a sudden it was one of those, all right, you had the idea, go ahead and run with it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was a 2-year process, actually. Our district, myself and a colleague, we applied for what was called an educational improvement tax credit. So it was done through our Ed Foundation, and one of the local banks sponsored our camp. So we got $20,000, which is an amazing amount of money, and we were able to provide a summer camp for 57 campers in the Northern Lehigh School District. So it was for children ages going into 3rd through 6th grade. And it was just a 2-week camp, and we did a whole bunch of different hands-on activities, robotics, coding, DNA, tons of different activities where the students actually had a chance to dig into more of an inquiry-based instruction rather than just lecture-based, which is really important. Yeah, it was really neat to see the kids excel. I know a lot of the students were excited to see that I was a part of camp because they thought it was going to be a lot of physical activity, but I was trying to stress the importance of STEAM as not just, a topic, but just how there's so many different skills that are involved in STEAM that often I guess we don't think about. A lot of people view STEAM as science, technology, engineering, and math, which it is, but I kind of view it more as a mindset or a culture. It's a different way of viewing education and trying to give kids these, people call them 21st century skills, but technically I guess we should be calling them 22nd century skills. Trying to get them ready to go for, what lies ahead. And oftentimes, it's not just supposed to be the science teachers and technology teachers and engineering and math teachers. It's really for everyone. We're all STEM and STEAM teachers. And that's something I was really trying to instill in the students, that these skills aren't just specific subject based. We are all teaching it. It's not just a class, it's learning for life.
I love that. That's, and I agree with you totally. I think maybe for 21st century skills, maybe we should just start calling them skills since we're 19 years into the 21st century. And it is skills that we all need. It's funny, I just read a book. There was a great book out called What School Could Be by Ted Dintersmith. He was one of the writers and producers of the document, the educational documentary Most Likely to Succeed. And one of the chapters that he talked about, there was a segment in the chapter, and this college kid called his parents and they said, "What class are you taking?" He said, "Sailing." And they said, "What else are you taking?" He said, "Nothing." And the parents were upset. But then when they called the university, they looked into it and they said, so sailing, they were working with a science teacher on the physics of sailing. They were working with a business teacher on the financing of sailing. They were working on a physical education teacher on the physical training it takes to be a sailor, and all of these other things that incorporated around sailing. And it was just really cool. Like it's kind of that STEAM idea that, we're all teachers of these skills and so on. So that's cool that you're doing that. Is it something that you think you're going to continue and renew the grant?
Well, it's been put back through for next year, so we'll have to wait and see. But it's more than likely we want to try to expand upon it and possibly maybe expand to students in the middle school as well. So it's really exciting. But there's so many connections to health and phys ed. I find it really upsetting when people are, stumped and don't really know how it applies to us, but it totally does. We teach you these skills all the time. I guess the simplest aspect to think how we teach them would be when we do the teamwork and cooperative activities, where you actually do the problem based and actually have the students try to figure it out and work together and use materials to solve it. So we do this stuff all the time. We just need to take credit for it and actually, more mindfully say that we're doing it.
Right. No, I love it. So Craig, let's jump over to you now. You've been one of my technology idols for a long, long time. I've been following you on Twitter probably before I met you in person, and just really fascinated and always enjoy watching what you do. And your Instagram, folks, if you don't follow Craig on Instagram, you got to look him up, Craig Kemmerlin on Instagram. He's just the coolest stuff that he's posting and what he's doing. But how did you teach yourself some of this technology about enhancing learning rather than just being a cool gadget? Talk about that a little bit.
I've taken a lot of courses. I've taken an iPads course in education. I've taken a Google course, an Office 365 course, a GoPro course with using effective video in the classroom, and it's just kind of spiraled from there. And there's so many people on Voxer in our phys ed technology group that we talk about all sorts of different apps and how you can use it in the classroom. And I think probably one of the biggest ones was when I got my iPad and I realized, I could film pretty easy, my class if we're doing, say, offensive or defensive strategies, and I can then take that to my students and say, hey, do you see this space here? This is where we need to move. This is where, a good opportunity is to position yourself. Just that I'm a very visual person, and I find that helps as well. When I got the GoPro, I realized it could help me with skill in the weight room with my students, because I always talk about technique and what they need to do to kind of improve upon, get the technique down. And once I brought in the GoPro and put it on the side view of them doing a squat, and I'm like, do you see how I'm saying you're doing a 3/4 squat? We want to get down a little bit lower. We want to initiate with the hips, things like that. Just that visual aspect for them goes a long way in them learning the technique the correct way. I've started to create portfolios where they do self-assessments on their techniques using Seesaw. I've done it with Office 365. Currently, we're using Schoology. Those have helped with the students, self-assess themselves. They have their own little portfolio where we kind of guide learning and everything that's happening throughout the course on their basis. It kind of lets me, go through their portfolio, and then during class time, I can walk around and talk to them, while they're on the rest periods if we're in the weight room. That helps a lot. GIFs are another big one that I've gotten into. I felt like we couldn't progress with different types of exercises because I felt like I always had to teach the technique each day that we returned in. They didn't remember all the exercises. So I took exercises that we were doing and I turned them into GIFs and put it in a PowerPoint and flashed it up on the projector that we got in the weight room about 2 years ago. And that has been a huge improvement for us in terms of, students being able to do all sorts of different exercises, as well as freeing up myself to go talk with other students about some of the other concepts and whatnot that were going on. So I like to mess around with technology. We have phones in our hands all the times ourselves. So, why not embrace technology and see how you can incorporate and use it in the classroom? And that's my goal, is to, use it as a learning tool.
Mm-hmm. So teaching at the high school, I mean, I've taught at the high school, and I've been going around to professional developments for the better part of 15 years. I always hear high school teachers, inevitably there's that one or two in the room that says, high school kids are ambivalent. High school kids aren't interested in anything. What has been the response of your students to this type of learning? Was it something you had to kind of work them into, or was it something they were like, oh my gosh, thank God there's something different?
Well, it all kind of, I took a little bit at a time as I learned and started to infuse it. And honestly, the biggest kicker is the video delay app that I use in class, because there's maybe a 2-second delay and the students are wowed by it. And that's my hook, is I walk around with my iPad and, that's an instant hook. And I'm like, okay, here's how we're going to use it. Yeah. But they feel like it helps them with their technique when they're able to view that, and then they self-assess it on there. So one of the other things that we do is, we have students that, want to go into physical therapy or want to go into personal training. And with the video project that we do, we use our phones to film a technique, and now it's in their hands to be able to demonstrate it in a video as well as talk through it. So they have to now take those cues that we teach them, and they have to apply it to the technique that they're now demonstrating an exercise on, which they find, and they use an app to splice everything together and put it into a nice video for their presentation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to continue on a little bit, and I saw that your program that you're going to be doing at convention this year is about dancing, and it says "Don't be afraid to dance." I think is something in the title. And personally, I am very fearful of dancing. And if you see me on the dance floor, it's somewhat chemically induced, I will say. Very self-conscious about it. So I would say that if I were in yours, and I'm going to try to make it to yours, I would be like, go ahead, teach me how to dance. I got you, because I'm afraid. Give us an idea what we'll see and how we can overcome these fears.
Well, I used to be
Get on
just
the
like
couch
you, and I still am, probably out in public on a dance floor. But at Seven Springs, I think it was 2 years ago, I went to Jennifer Caputo's dance session that was going on. I took a huge step outside of my comfort zone going to that session. And the moment I walked out of that session, I told myself, I am going to teach dance. I really enjoyed what she did. I knew that I struggled with it, but it was something that I made a goal of mine. I am going to get over this fear of dance, and I'm going to learn how to dance and teach it to my students in somewhat. So I got a lot of help from my PLN. Allison Relier and Carrie Bolus really helped get me through this. So I started simple with, doing a German Schottisch. It's a 1-2-3 hop, and we put it to modern music. And we progressed to a choreographed songs, which I got from Scott Williams, who has amazing videos on YouTube if you're looking for dance videos. And they're so easy to get the hang of that I use those into my classroom with the students. We hide. I'm self-conscious. I don't make them dance out on the gym floor, so we go up in the wrestling room and hide. I have a lot of students that are self-conscious with it as well. So we start very simple, and I feel like we do some easy dances to get into it. We do jigsaws after we learn some of the rhythms where the students piece it together. One of the biggest things I got was last year at the national conference through Dance Play. They do this song called Heroes by Alesso. And it made it so much easier for people when we started using this song. We did it as a jigsaw. So you pick a superhero, and you create an 8 count to a superhero, say Superman. And that just gives the students an idea of what Superman is in their head. How am I going to act this out? And it made it a much more easier for the students to get into the dance when we did that shortly after some of the things we learned first. I polled my students and surveyed them after our unit, and they really felt comfortable. It was amazing to see how some of the students went from having no confidence in their abilities and how they felt leaving the unit that we covered. I tell them all the time, I'm very self-conscious about it. I still am. We're in this together. There's a big respect aspect to it going into that unit with everybody. And it's still a big confidence thing for me, but I am more comfortable dancing in front of my students than if I was to go somewhere out on the dance floor.
How about you two, Jen? Are you guys into dancing, and are you self-conscious like Craig and I?
Well, a little known fact about myself, I was a Pennsylvania polka spotlight couple with my husband last season. So yeah.
Nice.
So at the WVIA studios.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now I'm intimidated by you.
And Jen likes to dance. I know that for sure.
I love to dance. I absolutely love to dance. I just am really hoping that people don't have their phones out when I'm dancing, because I'm pretty sure that self-assessment would not go so well.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm the guy that's like, the one song is playing and the dance that I'm doing is like to a completely different song. It's like, do you even hear the rhythm kind of thing? So anyway. All right. Well, Jens, we'll switch over. You guys are teaming on one, said something about Apple TV and the health and PE classroom. Can you give us a look at what that's going to be? I mean, Apple TV, I think, is like kind of like online TV, like if you're Roku or Google or YouTube or something, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not an Apple guy, so you have to kind of clue me in a little bit on this.
So yeah, I could go. So what's cool about Apple TV, you could actually use it as a TV device, like a streaming device. But what we're really going to focus on is how you could use it kind of to share information from your personal device. A lot of the schools are going to bring your own technology or having iPads readily available. So actually bringing them into the phys ed environment and health environment, you could have students work independently on these devices and then use the Apple TV as a means of sharing out from their personal device using screen share. So, and actually, it's called mirroring. So that's something we're going to show at our presentation and have people engage in different tasks.
Will you be looking at like assessments in any way, or will it be student projects? Or
Jen, do you want to go? Or
Yeah, I was going to say, basically, that's one great thing about Apple TV is, you incorporate video with their own devices, and, we'll talk more about like advantages and disadvantages, but basically, you have student accountability because they're able to demonstrate, for example, a skill, whether it be serving the birdie over the net, or it could be even demonstrating decision making or through role playing and health education. And so, because they have their own devices for the most part, they're more comfortable using it. And then I've even found in the classroom setting that students will kind of be perfectionists because they can look at the video and redo it over and over and over until they get it correct, or I should say improvement, and then they're ready to show it to their class. So it gives them that opportunity to, like kind of what Craig says about self-assessment, and then improve, and then they do better overall whenever it comes to showing it to their peers and their teachers.
Mm-hmm. Sounds kind of like it would be a good thing for a school district with BYOD policy instead of like the 1-to-1 too, maybe.
Yeah, we really like it just because it really is making something that usually is like a more independent thing, like using a phone and allowing them to share out. Also for teachers too, it like in a gym environment, you don't have to stand by a laptop to actually use it and project what you're doing to the students. You could actually continue to move and just have it on you, which is kind of nice.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see that. I'm going to try to get to that one as well. So one of the big things that I believe strongly over just the last few years with my work in reading George Couros and looking at his work is I just thought that secondary education, secondary especially physical education, needed to modernize. I saw a lot of, at least up in the area that I come from, a lot of sport model. Do you know pick and roll in basketball? Here's your playbook in football and all of that stuff. Can you guys talk a little bit about your thoughts on modernizing secondary phys ed? Because I know recently I kind of created a vision at the school I work where we went to an elective format involving student choice, student voice, which is too much for another time because it's not my show. But can you talk about what your thoughts are on what it would be to modernize secondary phys ed? Because I feel like it's an endangered species. Greg, I'll start with you because I know you teach at the high school, and then we'll work through everybody else.
Yeah, I think you're right with the, it's been a lot of team focus in secondary phys ed, and we're now starting to individualize that more about fitness and being able to do things by yourself or in small groups. So we do have the individual fitness component involved with our units, but we also do have some team units involved, in covering the standards, just because, for instance, softball is still pretty big in this area once you are an adult. So doing those striking skills, we feel are still okay within our units, because we do have a pretty big population that plays softball. That's just one example there. But individualizing as much as we can in terms of fitness and about you, and hopefully we get heart rate monitors. I think that's a huge difference as well. But yeah, individualizing as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Rudella?
Oh, thank you. So basically, one of the biggest concerns just in general with even online physical education is, what do we do to hold students accountable? And I know, Craig, you had talked about the heart rate monitors too. It's so important. Students need that quick feedback to see where they're at as far as physical activity levels, and they need to understand how it progresses, or, the more in shape you are, obviously, your target heart rate zones will change. So they need to understand how those need to make so that they can meet those needs. And for heart rate monitors would be a good technology component. I also think too, like with the Apple TV of demonstrating the skills, you have that accountability, even if it's online PE, they are demonstrating that skill to you and submitting it, whether it be through maybe a D2L shell or something like that, or Flipgrid, and putting it all in there for you to review. But it's very much more individualized, not as many sport models, obviously. Hopefully more people are doing more individualized programs so that they can utilize those pedometers, heart rate monitors, and so forth to show students where they could be at.
Awesome. Dan, anything to add?
Well, I'm a big advocate for choice and voice. And I think since, especially Shape America has changed the focus to creating physical literacy within our students, we really have to look at the components that involves, and one of which is being the confidence to engage in physical activities for a lifetime. And that is a difficult skill to allow the students to practice. So I think choice is a great opportunity to allow students to build their confidence in a variety of different activities, and then actually then apply it to different skill sets in sports.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being with us tonight and talking about this stuff with us. I do have one more segment that I want to run through. This kind of came to me. One of my favorite shows earlier, a couple of years ago, was Inside the Actor Studio. And at the end of each segment, James Lipton asked each of the people that he interviewed 10 questions, from things like, what's your favorite word? What's your favorite swear word? And we're not going to get into the swear words tonight because, you know, we're teachers. But what we're going to do, our version of that, it's called Twitter advice. So think about 280 characters, just quick, easy answers. First thing that comes to mind. I'll kind of go through 5 questions with you and see what your thoughts were. I think it's kind of a cool way to share some advice. So we'll start with the first one, and we'll just go Craig and then down through the gens and go from there. So one thing you need to do to become a great teacher, Craig.
I think the best thing that has helped me is surrounding myself with a PLN for professional development. Is well worth its weight in gold.
All right, Dr. Rudella.
Basically, just don't be afraid to try new things and be that role model for students.
All right, Jen.
Well, I always like to agree with Jen. So mine is always try new things, but don't be afraid to fail. Like, put yourself out there. You know, you can't get stuck in that rut, but just keep going.
Like maybe dancing or something, right?
You never know.
All right. So the most important learning that kids should take from your classes, Craig.
Ooh, I don't have one answer for this. So I think it depends on the student and the individual. Some it might be self-esteem and their confidence. Some it's going to be towards a healthier lifestyle. Some it's going to be for skills. Some it's going to be towards their, you know, professional career and what they want to do in the future. So I think it's individualized in that sense.
Cool. Dr. Rudella?
I'd have to say, you know, find what makes you happy and where your talents are, and then find a profession or even a hobby or something that you can use those talents. And then that'll help you with, you know, stress management and so many other things in life.
Cool. Jen?
Oh, I would hope they would leave with a sense of curiosity, trying to continue to do awesome things and look for ways to continue to engage. Confidence, of course, and caring.
Cool. All right. Favorite educators on Twitter or online in general?
There's way too many to name. So I typically follow a lot of the secondary phys ed teachers on Twitter, but I get a ton of information from elementary phys ed teachers as well, whether it's for my adaptive life skills class or even my general phys ed class as well. So,
okay.
Cool. Boy, I have to say 2 people are here. Craig, I haven't met you until tonight, but Jen and Todd, I enjoy following both of you.
Oh,
you're kind. Jen?
So I have a few that I follow pretty steadily. The Phys Ed Depot and PE for Every Kid. I really enjoy a lot of visuals, a lot of good tips and tricks and resources you could take right into the classroom. 2 new people I started following more recently, Foes for Sports and Lynn Heffel, giving you a lot of good technology advice and how to integrate it into the PE setting.
Cool. All right. So best advice you've ever gotten, and if you can say from who, that's awesome too.
I'm going to go for the teaching world in this one, and that is probably to get to know your students and build relationships with them first, which I learned from Justin Slider a couple of years ago, and that just has really helped with every student individually and getting the best out of them in my class.
Excellent. He's a guy you should follow on Twitter too, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to say do good work, and your work will speak for itself. And that was some of the IUP faculty whenever I was in the doctoral program to help keep you through it and survive and thrive.
Awesome. Jen?
Mine would be never stop learning, which is something I'm really happy to say that I haven't. I continue every year to try to better myself as an educator and a person. And that was a lot of the faculty at Lock Haven say those words.
Awesome. So one day we're all going to walk out of the gym for the last time and shut the door. And what would you like your epitaph on your gym door to say?
So in the past year, I've been bringing up a lot to my students about, failing to succeed and how important that is to have success. So I think mine would say success comes from failure.
Awesome.
That one's tough to follow, I have to say.
Right?
Wow. I just have to say that hopefully at that point in time that the energy and enthusiasm that I have for education can resonate to students and to be passionate about whatever they are passionate about.
Awesome.
Oh, I guess mine would have to be somewhat simple. I like simple. Sometimes those words carry the most meaning. Maybe be kind, work hard, stay humble.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks so much. The three of you are amazing educators, and I follow all of you on social media and always look forward to what you're saying and doing. And I idolize you in many, many ways, and that you probably don't even know, which is why you're here tonight. So thank you for being on with us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at convention, and hopefully we can do this again sometime because this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Good night, everyone.